Another example which I provided in the class just yesterday, a day before yesterday, was you can engage some students, for example, in role play, playing the role of a politician who is campaigning to be elected to an office. So one of the things that you want to do during this stage, because I suppose this is a kind of advanced level sort of role play, is that you want to raise the awareness about the role of emotions, because these guys, these politicians who are campaigning to be elected, need to engage their audiences emotionally. If a campaigner only relies on statistics and graphs and diagrams and what he can do and what he has done, that won't be very interesting. So there must be moments where the audiences are emotionally engaged. So this includes the choice of a right kind of music, background music, the choice of right facial expressions, the use of correct intonation and correct tones and all that, about which the students should be aware. One of the interesting books that I highly recommend for everyone who is teaching speaking is this book written by a neuroscientist called Tali Sharot. The book is entitled The Influential Mind. She provides a lot of cool examples about how the brain works and how we get emotional and what kind of cognitive biases can affect our audiences. One of the strategies that politicians appeal to is, like I said, to engage their audiences emotionally, and therefore they use words that are emotionally or sentimentally charged, and they through which they try to move their audiences, to bring them to a point where you can see tears in their eyes. Well, whether or not this is a sincere strategy, I do not really want to make a comment about that, because that would fall outside of the scope of this presentation. But it is a strategy, and if students are, playing the role of a politician who's campaigning, they need to be familiar with this concept. For example, on page 45 of the book, here's a very brief quotation from Sharot. It says, "Our brains are designed to transmit emotions quickly to one another, because emotions often convey important information about our environments. For example, if I detect your fear, I'm more likely to feel fear too, and as a result, scan my surroundings for danger." And that's end quotation. In the same way, if the audiences of a politician feel that a politician is now, for example, kind of sad about something, or is getting emotional, chances are that the audiences also get emotional. I have talked about this concept in my videos about listening, but this is something called empathy, which is also a facet in listening and listening comprehension. So you can combine those concepts as well. You can go back to those videos and see how empathy and also the system, the neural system, which I mentioned, which is called the mirror system, works, and how those concepts can be combined here and help the students achieve the best in this section. A long story short, it's important for us to know the task pretty well, to know a lot of things or everything about the task in which the students are involved, so we can help them at stage 5. But if you don't really know the task, you don't have much knowledge about it, if you don't look at different layers, psychological layers, behavioral layers, or even neurocognitive layers of the task, I don't think that we will be able to train students properly. Stage 6 is when the second round of repetition or the second round of speaking is over. During this stage, we want to direct learners' reflection on their learning. This is where self-regulation of performance and their development plays a role here. We want to help them to monitor and evaluate their performance, and especially their learning, and consolidate their learning in different ways. One of the strategies that can help here is to engage them in individual or small group reflections. For example, they can reflect on their own performance, or the group itself can reflect on the group performance. So what should those reflections focus on? Here are a few suggestions. One is they should focus on raising the awareness of the demands of speaking task. I already mentioned, for example, for the role play of a politician who is campaigning, the demands of the task should be very well recognized by the teacher and should be conveyed to the student properly. So which means the teacher really should do some good research before engaging students in any activity. It's not like, okay, let's talk about weather today. So what about weather? And weather is good, weather is clement or inclement, and those kind of things. The teacher should know exactly different dimensions and should do it methodically and systematically. Otherwise, the task will not be successful. We need to know the science of the task. Then raising the awareness of the strategies that are useful for the demands of the task. One of the strategies, like I mentioned, is choosing, for example, background music, or it's on top of the communication strategy which I've talked about before. Another thing would be to teach them how to use proper and relevant body language and gestures and eye contacts and those kind of nonverbal communication skills that I have covered in one of the previous videos. One more thing is self-assessment. Self-assessment has to do with monitoring and especially evaluation. So if you are engaging them in self-assessment, you are helping them to start evaluating their performance. But this must not be limited to one session. They must keep evaluating the performance over the time. And then through the self-assessment and evaluation, they will find the strength areas and areas that are in need for improvement. And finally, not only this, but also you need to help them to plan for improvement. One of the strategies that can help them to plan for improvement is to keep a portfolio, to record what they have learned, to record their plans, to record their strengths and weaknesses, and something that they're planning to learn in the future. And finally, to facilitate feedback on learning. Let me tell you about feedback a little bit. There are different ways of looking at feedback. Some people, like Tim McNamara, have divided feedback into 3 types. One type is called cheerleading feedback. So it aims to improve students' confidence. We say, you did a good job, thank you, I really appreciate the time that you spent on this task, and I hope that you keep up the good work. That's cheerleading. Of course, we're sincere here that the feedback is genuine in the sense that the aim of this cheerleading feedback is to boost their confidence. That's one type. The other type is what McNamara calls the real world kind of feedback, where you start to talk about the strength or the weaknesses. So let's talk about the strength. The strength feedback is something that you recognize that students have done correctly, the skills that they seem to have mastered, the strategies that they have used correctly and accurately, the vocabulary that they have used precisely, and those kind of things. Another type of feedback, which is a third one, focuses on the weaknesses of students. And here you need to talk about the gaps, the inaccuracies, the lack of fluencies, or lack of complexities in their performances. During this provision of feedback, what you aim to do is to help students further develop their metacognitive awareness about planning, about monitoring and evaluating. Plan, monitor, evaluate. So they become a better planner, a person who monitors himself or herself and evaluates it continuously. If you like, you can provide some comments in addition to the grades that you give them. But this is like a summative kind of thing, kind of addition, in addition to the formative evaluations that I have been talking about, the feedback and peer evaluations and self-evaluations. You can also give them some scores, but it's not really necessary. I would say it's up to you if you want to give them a grade or not. I personally wouldn't, because I think the whole idea here is to boost their accuracy, fluency, and complexity, and also their self-confidence. So if the grade is not satisfactory, then I think it will not do anything good. At the end, students can also exchange their reflections and comments on each other's performance, but it's important that if you engage students in this sort of exchange of comments, it's important that you teach them how to provide comments and feedback to each other. This is called the process of evaluation. So you don't just want to leave them to give feedback to each other, which may not necessarily be useful. So provide them with some samples of cheerleading feedback, samples of positive, and samples of feedback on weaknesses and lacks. So this brings me to the third installment of these videos. Thank you very much for your attention. I will come back with one more video about the role of metacognition, maybe one or two, I'm not sure how long it will take. Thanks.